exactly that immovability that allows us to stand firm. That if we're giving with every wind of belief or value system, that we'll never have anything that we know is true. We have the Word of God. We have Jesus Christ. We know what is true, and we can move forward. We can stand firmly on that and know what's going on. So, why present opposition? How does it help? How does it move us forward in any way to present opposition? Well, Paul talks about that in verses 28 and 29. We see examples of that throughout Scripture. Isaiah 51:7, great example. 2 Timothy 1:7, James 1:2, and Luke 12, verses 4 through 7. All of these are examples where we see, why do I present opposition? Why is it not acceptable for me to do it my way and you to do it your way? Why does that not work? Because that is an opinion that the world loves to give. Well, we'll just agree to disagree. It'll all work out fine. But opposition can cause us to second guess. If God has called us, why do we doubt? We are relying on our perspective. And our perspective is very limited. We are one person in one place, living in one moment. God is so far beyond that, we can't begin to understand it. As you've read in the Psalms, I'm sure, it's as far as a bird is from the heavens. Yeah, sure, our understanding might be up there, it might be high as a bird, still not in the stratosphere. Still nowhere, it's not even a dent in that understanding. So there is no more to following Christ. There is no more to following Christ than believing. And Paul represents suffering as giftedness. Let's look at this real quick, because that's hard to understand for us. And this is a real key turning point for Paul. So starting in verse 28, this is a sign to them who will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for him. Paul's telling you, you're getting two gifts in standing firm. First one is, by standing firm within the Word, you can believe on God. The other one, and this sounds like, say it again, Paul? I can't believe what you just said. The other gift that standing firm gives you is you are allowed to suffer. We hear people all the time saying, well, I became a Christian, I follow the Bible, my life's still hard. Good, you're probably doing it right. Paul's telling us right here, one of the gifts that we are given is that we are allowed to suffer. Let's bring it in at a different angle. What does suffering build within you? It builds character, builds patience, builds perseverance, confidence, faith, long-suffering, love, understanding. Okay? These all sound like pretty good things. Okay? But when we look at the front end of it, you're being given the gift of suffering. What happens if we remove the gift of suffering, though? That if we're never challenged, we're never pushed, we're never given any of those things, what happens? Kind of a loaded question. Nothing. Nothing happens. Right? We don't move forward, we don't strive, we don't change, we don't grow when everything's going great. What's that old phrase? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we don't. Right? It is when God puts the screws to us just a little bit, or allows maybe more accurate to say, allows the screws to be turned, or we put the screws on ourselves more times than not, that we can learn through our suffering, that we can learn through these things and become better. And when we fall flat on our face, and we will, where do we turn? When we've all been in this position at some point in your life, if you haven't, you'll be there, and you'll know the moment that I'm talking about, where you just can't do it. It's not within your power. You can't possibly move forward in any way. So all of these things, all the things that we talked about, love, patience, strength, enduring, understanding, confidence, all of these things are ways that suffering is a gift. And it's what Paul's pointing out to us, that what he's going through at that moment Even as he's in that jail, he is saving people within that jail. He is saving soldiers in the Roman imperial army. He is spreading the news of Christ, even in that situation that he would never have if he wasn't in jail at that moment. He would never be able to talk to those criminals. He would never have that time with imperial guard. And so consequently, our suffering can be a gift as well. So, think of it like you're being handed, you've been handed, as you accepted Christ, this nice little etched, it's like a wedding invitation, right? With the gold trim on the outside and all the fancy scrawling. You've been invited to believe and suffer. These are the two things you've gotten. But what we have to do, what we'll catch ourselves doing, is thinking in the flesh, but I don't want to suffer. Suffer sounds really unpleasant. But we know to choose. We know to look beyond. We know that old phrase of no pain, no gain. If we want to move forward, whether it's in a gym or whether it's in our spiritual life, there has to be some suffering. There has to be some enduring to see a fruit on the other end of it. If it's all easy, then no growth is probably happening. So, continuing on this whole idea of why to present opposition, why not only move forward in faith, but stop any kind of opposition to us. To this point, all the examples Paul has given us relates to Paul. Paul has talked about Paul and what's going on in Paul's life and how he feels about them. At this point, he turns it around and starts to put it on the Philippians, and by putting on the Philippians, by extension, he's putting it on us as well. He invites the Philippians, and at the same time is inviting us, to live a life like him. What's that mean? To live a life like Paul. He would feel joy, he says, if you live a life like me. Sacrificial. Good. What else? Like Jesus? Good. Focused? Joyful. He's got his eye on the ball throughout the entire thing of this, and who is he thinking of? This is a big point that we'll keep coming back to. His brothers and sisters in the Lord. Right? He's thinking about God, he's thinking about God's children, and he's thinking about what he needs to do for them, through them. So as long as we insist on viewing the world through our perspective, one of comfort and security, will not accomplish what God desires. So Paul's saying, live a life like me. Live a life where you'll be challenged. Live a life outside your comfort zone. Live a life boldly. And choose something other than yourself. I keep coming back to, I keep thinking of the rich young man who came up to Jesus Christ and said, I followed all the commandments. What else do I need to do? And Jesus tells him to sell everything he has, pick up his cross and follow him. And the rich young man, as you all remember, walked away sad. Paul's giving us the same message from a different slant. If you can live a life like I'm living, where you're looking to the Bible, you're looking to the Word of Jesus Christ to guide everything you do, that suffering will make you into a new person, and that new person will bring not only God, but ultimately you joy. But we shouldn't just accept the fact that we may suffer for Christ. We should embrace it. Because that's the next thing. That's that next step, that next idea. It's real hard for us to warm up to the idea that we're going to suffer. Paul's saying, take it a step further. How did he feel about being in prison? What was his word? Do you remember? At the beginning of chapter 1? He was joyous. He was thrilled to be in jail because it gave him these opportunities to reach these people he could never reach before, to be this example, so people could see, okay, how's the big apostle going to act now? The same way he acted every other time, whether things were bounteous or whether he was imprisoned, whether he was at a party or whether he was eating bread and water for the last 90 days. He had the same reaction to each thing. He didn't just accept, okay, it's my time to suffer, I'll get through it. He looked and said, God, what do you want me to get from this? How do you want me to grow? How do you want me to change? Then Paul launches into, and this is probably my English background kicking in a little bit, a whole wordplay that Paul sets up for us. he goes through this whole if this, then what scenario at the beginning of chapter 2 in verses 1 and 2. And we see this same example, not just in Paul. I pulled some other examples out of here. John does the same concept in chapter 15, verses 10 and 12. We see the psalmist using this in Psalm 133, verse 1. Paul uses it a different time in 2 Corinthians 13:4. And then Peter uses it in one of his letters, 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. This whole idea, as I talked about earlier, about setting up something and then breaking it down for us. Let's look at the verses first, though. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with his Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one spirit and purpose. So, Paul sets you up to have you realize that all your hemming and hawing and but I don't want to suffer and I don't like some of these things you're saying, he sets this up. Paul lists out several qualities of Christ that he feels is important. So, if Christ is what? If he is an encourager. If Christ offers comfort and love. If Christ gives fellowship of the Spirit. If Christ offers love and compassion. Or maybe a better way to put this would be to say, because we already know this is true, instead of if, perhaps we should say, since Christ is an encourager, since he offers comfort and love, since he offers fellowship with the Spirit, since he offers love and compassion, then what? He's telling us to be like-minded. He doesn't stop there, though. He goes into it even further. He says, be of one spirit. What else does he say? Consider others, and consider them how? As better than yourself. In other words, he's telling us to act like whom? Like Jesus, like Christ himself. If Christ does these things, and you are a Christian, and you are trying to act Christ-like, then get along with each other. Work together. Put others' needs before yourselves. Love, comfort, show compassion, have fellowship, be of a spirit, and encourage one another. If this is true of Christ, then this seems to be true within yourself. So, Paul seems to keep focusing on the whole idea of the mind. And the question might come up to you, why is he so intent on the mind? He keeps talking about what we think and what we choose and what we believe. Shouldn't it be more about what we feel? Shouldn't it be more about our heart? The mind, what's in the mind? Well, it's got analytical capabilities. You can understand it. You can break it down. It creates reasons. Creates justifications. On the other side, though, it harbors suspicions. It catalogs all the offenses anyone has ever done against you. Any brother or sister or business partner or ex-wife or anything. But perhaps most importantly, it advocates fighting for our rights. I should be able to, I should be allowed to, I have earned, I deserve. I remember the capital offense in my house growing up was sitting in Dad's chair. Because it wasn't your right to sit in Dad's chair. That was his privilege. That was his right. Would that be Christ-like? Can you see Christ going, hey, get out of my chair. That's my seat. I sit in the center seat. Haven't you seen the painting? Everyone else sits around.